so I want to look at a couple of things. First of all, what do we mean by reality? Because we use reality in two senses. Either there's the physical reality, the world out there, the world you're seeing now, or so it seems, and then there's the experience reality that appears in consciousness. And that's what you're actually experiencing, is not the room out there, you're experiencing what appears in consciousness. And so we use reality in both these ways. And what's happening, and we all know this, in fact this is one of the things that science or psychology, neurophysiology fully understands, but it doesn't actually think it through the implications. What we know is that the world out there, whatever it is, and we'll look at that in a moment, gets processed by the brain, and we have this experience of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching the world out there. But we're actually living in a virtual reality created by the brain. It's a very good one. It's a pretty accurate one. It allows us to navigate around. This is where I think, when I reach out to touch this, it is where I see it. But we're actually living in a reality created by the brain. And so as well as being an information processor, we can say the brain is actually a reality generator, continually generating experience for us. And so what we actually see are representations of the world out there. We don't actually see the world out there. We're seeing representations of it that the brain's created. So all that we ever know of the world is actually an inference from experience. And this is really important, because we think we're seeing the world out there, we make all these statements about it, and what science is trying to do, the goal of science is to understand what the world out there is like, how it functions. And we're doing all of this from taking data from our actual experience and projecting it out onto the world out there. And it's all to do with, again, with knowing. And it's interesting, the word science comes from the Latin scire, to know, and the word consciousness comes from the Latin scire. It means to know with, conscire, consciousness. So the science looks at what is known, and consciousness is what we know with. It's that we know with our consciousness. Our knowing takes place in consciousness. Now, the problem with all this is we imagine that the world out there is just like our experience of it. So, right now there's green leaves over there. There's actually no green over there. There's something over there which sends off light of a certain energy, a certain wavelength, which is just another concept in the mind. And that light hits my eye, the retina, sends impulses down to the brain, but they're not green impulses, there's nothing green about it. The brain processes it and comes up, for me, with the experience of green. But the greenness is only in my experience, it's not out there. And that's the same with everything. If I'm smelling a flower, the flower itself doesn't smell. It sends out molecules which touch my nose, and the brain creates this reality of the aroma of a flower. But it's only in the mind. Or you're hearing my voice. But what's actually happening is air molecules, whatever they are moving backwards and forwards and hitting your eardrum and hitting little hairs there which process it and create the experience of you hearing my voice. But it's all only in the mind. So, is there anything we can say about the world out there? Anything at all? And I think there's several things, and that's where I want to go with this. First is, it's not homogeneous, which means it's not all the same. By which I mean, whatever my finger is, somehow is different from the air next to it. It's structured differently. Whatever an electron is somehow different from a proton. We don't know what they are, but the structure there in the world, there's variations. So we have a world where there's a lot going on, but there's a lot of complex structure and variation. And the second thing we know about it is that this structure and variation changes over time. You know, my finger was here a moment ago, now it's over here, so the structure of the universe changed over a few seconds. It's always changing, unfolding. So all that we can say is there's a dynamic, meaning it's changing, a dynamic, structured field of being. And I use the word being because it's the most neutral word I think we can find for this. I mean, it literally means what is. Being is just is. It's just isness. I don't want to give it any other qualities other than just to say it is. It's a field of being of some form.